second. You are, I don't see screen share.
The-
Okay, now I can see it.
Yep. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم السلام عليكم الحمد لله رب العالمين ربنا آتنا من لدنك رحمة وهيئ لنا من أمرنا رشدا ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العظيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي واجعل لي وزيرا من أهلي هارون أخي أشدد به أزري واشركه في أمري كي نسبحك كثيرا ونذكرك كثيرا إنك كنت بنا بصيرا وصل اللهم على محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين والحمد لله رب العالمين. All right, welcome friends. We'll continue with the topic of sincerity as we had discussed last time for the last 3 sessions, I think we did. So this is a continuation from the 21st flash on sincerity. Right. So the author kind of compared how our mindset in terms of the people who are really dedicated to their relationship with the Creator, acknowledging Him in worship, whatever, right? And then those who are, and considering the hereafter, that this is not the only life that we have, whereas the other people of the Ahle Dunya, he calls, like the people of the world, we just live like animals in a way, basically just having whatever the worldly life, whatever I can get right now, and only considered the life of this world. And then the author made a lot of different distinctions with the different points that we went over in terms of how the civilization has also kind of brainwashed us in terms of what really matters for our lives. So I'll start with this new section basically, which he says, although originally the fourth of the seven matters of the 17th note of the 17th flash, because of its connection with sincerity, it became the second point of the 20th flash. Finally, due to its luminous character, it was included in the flashes as the 21st flash. So it is along the same lines, basically, as the authors when he was writing it. So he kind of put it in the same kind of after just following sincerity. So this flash should be read at least once a fortnight because it has probably a good significance of what really matters to us. So it is kind of beneficial. Hopefully we'll kind of get the message from this. So in the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, do not fall into dispute, right? Lest you lose heart and your power depart. Just from the Quran, section 8, verse 46. Do not fall into dispute unless you lose heart and your power depart. So pretty straightforward in a way, like a guidance recommendation. Hey, don't. And we kind of discussed this particular verse in the previous section as well of people of belief should not be falling into dispute, basically. Right? And of course, our hearts and whatever we're doing in this life should be actually in the service of the Quran and the hereafter in a way. So, and stand before God in a devout frame of mind, which is section 2, Baqarah, verse 238. Stand before God in a devout frame of mind. So, with the consciousness of God. So, truly, he succeeds that purifies it, and he fails that corrupts it. Section 91, verses 9 and 10. Truly, he succeeds that purifies it, and he fails that corrupts it. So, purification of, I guess, it meaning the heart in a way, right? Nor sell my signs for a small price. also section 2, verse 41. And they're followed by many other verses in the same line. So, O my brothers of the hereafter, and O my companions in the service of the Quran, and you do know that in this world, sincerity is the most important principle in works pertaining to the hereafter. It is the greatest strength, the most acceptable intercessor, the firmest point of support, the shortest way to reality, the most acceptable prayer, the most wondrous means of achieving one's goal, the highest quality, and the purest worship. So, all these definitions are for what sincerity is. So, it pertains to the hereafter, the greatest strength, the most acceptable intercessor, the firmest point of support, the shortest way to reality, the most acceptable prayer, the most wondrous means of achieving one's goal, the highest quality, and the purest worship. Right. So if you're really one is really dedicated to what they're doing, it becomes a pure, sincere worship. Since sincerity comprises much strength and many lights, like those mentioned above, and since at this dreadful time, despite our small number and weak, impoverished, and powerless state, and are being confronted by terrible enemies and suffering severe oppression in the midst of aggressive innovations and misguidance. The extremely heavy, important, general, and sacred duty of serving belief and the Quran has been placed on our shoulders by divine grace. The extremely heavy, important, general, and sacred duty of serving belief and the Quran has been placed on our shoulders by divine grace. We are certainly compelled, more than anyone, to work with all our strength to gain sincerity. We need more than anything to instill sincerity in ourselves. Otherwise, what we have achieved so far in service will in part be and will not persist, and we shall be held responsible. We shall manifest the severe threat contained in the divine prohibition, nor sell my signs for a small price, which is Quran section 2, verse 41. So, no, nor sell my signs for a small price, which he relates to our being in the service of the Quran. We shall be held responsible. Interesting. So, we shall otherwise destroy sincerity, thus harming eternal happiness. For the sake of meaningless, unnecessary, harmful, sad, self centered, tedious, hypocritical base feelings, and insignificant benefits. And if we were to do that, we would violate all our brothers' rights, transgress against the duty of service to the Quran, and be disrespectful towards the sacredness of the truths of belief. My brothers, there are many obstacles before significant good works. Satan, Satan's put up a powerful struggle against those who assist in them. In the face of those obstacles and Satan's, you have to rely on the strength of sincerity. You should avoid things that harm sincerity as you avoid snakes and scorpions. In accordance with the words of Joseph, upon whom be peace, nor do I absolve my own self of blame. The human soul is certainly prone to evil unless my sustainer do bestow his mercy. Quran section 12, verse 53. The evil commanding soul cannot be relied upon. Do not let egotism and the soul deceive you. To gain sincerity and preserve it, you should take as your guide the following rules. All right, so before we go into the rules, let's go over what we kind of read in a way, right? So, let me kind of summary a little bit what I got from this. So, the author gives starts with a few verses that basically touch upon how we should be sincere in our worship in a way. Okay, my connection is unstable. Hold on one second. All right, should be good. You guys can hear me, right? Okay, so continuing on. So the verses basically don't corrupt, basically don't dispute. So it's pretty clear instructions in a way on how a believer who is with gets the message of the Quran should be. So he says, and it's interesting how he starts with, "Oh, my brothers of the hereafter," right? So it's a very interesting way of starting it, not like the, okay, oh my brothers, but specifying that, hey, I want all my brotherhood or brothers to be with me in the hereafter as well. 'Cause, like, this is not really the only life that we have, but the actual life is basically in the hereafter. So that was something that I thought he starts it very well. And then, of course, he focuses on the service of being at the in the service of the Quran and being sincere. So that's why if you're sincere in the service of the Quran, one would not be falling into dispute or getting into their egoistic, corrupt selves rather, but they'll be sincerely being in the service of the Quran. Because he highlights again that sincerity is the most important principle in works. And then a couple of definitions. Basically, in sincerity, you gain strength, right? So, because we have a purpose in our, why are we here in this world, for example, right? Just to eat, sleep, and die in a way, but we do have a purpose in existence. So, use that purpose for what it's meant, given for. So, strength and then intercessor, basically. So, whatever we are doing, right? So that is the good works in a way. And if it's sincere, if it's acknowledging God, it should ben it benefits. It's good. It benefits us in a way, right? If, otherwise, we are losers in a way if you don't do it sincerely. Anything. So the firmest point of support, the shortest way to reality. So firmest point of support, sincerity being the firmest point of support. Is sincere, that would really hold. Right. So Adam, go ahead, please. I saw a raised hand. Go ahead, yeah.
Assalamu alaikum. So the most clear question to my mind is what is sincerity? What does it mean to be sincere? Because although it has a kind of like assumptive or implicit kind of aspect to it, but it needs to be, I think, discussed, right? Like because uh, it's not clear. Being sincere usually means like being more dedicated, being more, but not in the aspects necessarily of what's being discussed here. I would argue, or I would say, right? Because you could be sincere about something that's wrong and or bad or something like that. So what does sincerity really mean? I don't. Do you feel that it needs to be discussed at all?
That's a very good point. It's like intention, right? In a way, sincere, like how intention is used. So intention could be wrong, intention could be right. So sincerity, like you said, could be wrong. It's doing something wrong sincerely or doing something right sincerely. Yeah, I agree with you in that sense. So it has more, uh, much more nuance than what, based on what our previous discussions were, right? So he kind of touched upon also the how sincerity, if it's there, how it basically unites, is supposed to unite rather than is supposed to divide, or because the other way, because it leads us to our ego and being proud and conceited in a way. Whereas this sincerity is actually the state of mind of the human being, which regards, okay, I am a created being, and whoever made me, right, made me for a particular purpose, and that purpose is not only because everything is changing in my life right now, so it cannot be only for this life, but it must be something for another, the hereafter in a way. So that is kind of what the whole sincerity relationship is related to, the life of the hereafter, right? So nothing, even if you do something wrong, that's only in this world, but and if you've done it sincerely, right? So everything is accountable in a way, right? It must be so. I would say that whatever we're doing must be so because that's how the guidance and the prophetic message also tell us. But anybody, Suhail, maybe wants to chime in on this, or Adam, if you want to continue, you can do that too.
So the verses that you have in front of you and displaying, they give, I think, some strong points about how to understand sincerity. For example, maybe we can read each one and think about what does it have to do with sincerity, or what teaching or framing is being given to help us with sincerity, understanding
Sure.
sincerity.
Inshallah. Yeah, yeah.
Like, for example, this first one:
Yes, sir.
quarrel not with one another, do not fall into dispute, lest you lose heart and your power depart. 846. Where is the issue of sincerity, and what does one have to be sincere to, uh, or what is the connection between disputing and sincerity? I mean, it seems in one way obvious, but is there something else there, or should we just make it clear?
So from what I recall about the dispute, right, he did make a big point in the previous flash about it in the previous work, describing how why the people of who are sincere, people of like the hereafter, and the between the comparison of the people of this world, right? Why are they falling into dispute? And they should start ignoring little mistakes, pass by in error. Like so there was a verse that he quoted as well, right? So don't like try to work for the greater good in a way in terms of what the your purpose of life is in a way. So he tied like the author in his previous section tied everything in terms of like the dispute that one does is tied to how what sincerity which relates to what your purpose is and what the your life in the hereafter in a way. So it has that notion. I mean, even the verses of the Quran, why are we given those verses? Right? What is the message behind it? I mean, it cannot be just for this particular world, right? So it's not just for me to live my life right now, but it has all the ties that it has. It relates to the hereafter in a way.
Yeah. The interesting thing, if you look at the original language, it uses this word rihukum. Is it rihukum? Yeah. Which, and I know this is not what we usually do, but I'm just saying that I was trying to understand what is the word for power? Like, is it power, or does it have to do with something else? But the word that's used is spirit, because another translation I'm looking at, it says
Sure, yeah.
quarrel not with one another, lest you lose heart and your spirit depart.
Huh, interesting. Yeah.
And so it refers it back to the heart and the spirit in one of the translations.
And what is the Arabic word?
Rihukum. Rihukum.
Mhm.
It has to do with ruh, your spirit.
Right, right. So basically, your whatever human qualities that are given, basically, if you lose them, don't use them properly, right? So in these kind of the discussions with Brother Ali, we kind of emphasize on using our human senses and our human qualities for what they're intended, why they're given to us for, right? So basically, lose your heart and your, let's say, your spirit or your human qualities. Basically, once the death is given to us, we just, that's it, it's done, right? That you're doing, and there's no more training after it once the death is given. So
Yeah,
yeah, I can see why, yeah, spirit, and I would tie it to human qualities in a way.
yeah. Human qualities, human motivations, or human courage, even because it's like it seems to be. I'm not an Arabic person who knows a lot about Arabic, but I'm saying that seems to be indicating something to do with courage, with you're losing your heart, losing your energy, your morale.
Right, right,
Like there's some kind of connection between your morale and your spirit. So if you go into quarreling, I'm just one possible interpretation. You get into quarreling, which looks to maybe the egoistic side, then your motivation for doing the action will depart. Like in the context, don't quarrel with your brothers or don't quarrel with those with you,
right,
right? Because the context is don't quarrel with one another, even if it's with your brothers, or let's say even you're not. Let's not quarrel with anyone because in quarreling, simple, really super simplistic, ego takes the precedence. Spirit, life, meaningful aspects of it take the backseat, or even diminish completely. So sincerity is thereby lost. So some kind of awareness of the spirit, awareness of your and we in the spirit, as we I think we studied, has to do with your knowing, being connected with your creator, being conscious about the hereafter. Your spirit wants that, like you said, brother Awesome, about the hereafter. So I'm just saying that uh, I don't know. So sincerity means don't let the other things other than these two main pillars be in connected with the work that you do. Like be careful of anything that disrupts these two major pieces: belief in God and the hereafter, connecting yourself with your creator, and also being conscious of the hereafter. So anything that comes in between it, like quarreling, which is usually because of egoistic reasons. So be careful from that. Don't do that. And one can probably sense that your energy level departs. Your interest in doing the action, with the real meaningful kind of intent or meaningful way, it will diminish. So anyway, so that's one. The second one, stand before God in devotion. Is that what it says? And stand before God in a devout frame of mind. So, well, I don't know the simple way, and I, I was just thinking, what comes into your frame of mind that could be other than God? Obviously, some things of this world, this worldly life, the things that distract you, the things that may seem to be, in a sense, more priority than even being conscious of God. So those should also be thought about. So again, don't lose that. Uh, he who purifies his own soul, and he who corrupts and fails it. Truly, he succeeds that purifies it and fails that corrupts it. But that one's a little bit interesting, but I'll just move to the next one. Nor sell my signs for a small price. And this is talking, I think, in the religious context, but maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe even if you're not doing religious work, maybe you're still exposed to the signs of God. But to reduce it only to transactional, usage is also a big problem. So I, I think there's a pattern, of course, between these verses that we can see.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, nor sell my signs. I mean, the signs in the universe also that point to whoever made them, right? So if we or take them for granted, for example, the sun shining or the air that we breathe. I mean, if you don't realize, yes, every breath we're taking is actually a gift that whoever made me or whoever made the air also is basically giving to me. Everything is just given in a way, but even the human qualities, even the eyes, ears, nose, I mean, if you just misuse them or take them for granted, yeah, definitely we are losing out, basically paying a small price. But also, in addition, the service of the Quran don't basically charge for some service that you're doing, which is for the Quran, which is sincere, right? So it goes into that as well, in a way. So yeah, it can be expanded in many different ways. But usually when I hear it, it's mostly related to the service of the Quran in a way, don't sell my signs. And I was talking to one of the religious person, he took offense basically because it's for them, they are employed by doing that, right? But that's a different conversation altogether. And he quoted this verse, it was the one that came up basically, right? And of course, the one you said before, truly he succeeds, that purifies it, referring to the soul or spirit, right? That's what you said. So that I think that makes sense. Whoever uses them properly or whoever does not, right? Basically, just living like an animal for the life of this world, and that's a corruption of the spirit. Otherwise, the elevated spirits, purified is only which are at the service of God and the hereafter. So doing some religious duty or calling others as well, and realizing that they are created, everything that exists is created, and everything is just given as a gift to all of us. Truly, he succeeds that purifies it. Yeah, any other comments or thoughts? That's pretty good. I mean, it's a good interactive conversation. I think we should do that. All right, no comments, so we can continue. Yeah, so I was here, right? The firmest point of support. I think he does make in the previous, I think this paragraph is a lot of the summary of what we kind of discussed in the previous work as well, in terms of don't fall into dispute, don't let your ego come up, right? And then let this be the greatest strength, the most acceptable intercessor for you, the firmest point of support, however you're doing it. If you have the support of the Lord of the universe, rely on any other being. So that was one of the points that was made, right? So the people of the world, ala dunya, they look for strong people who can get them ahead in their whatever in their life, right? So they have whereas whoever is at the service of the Quran, right? So their support is basically the Lord of the universe. So if it's sincere, then you definitely get the powerful point of support and also the shortest way to reality. So let's hear from Suhail. Go ahead, Suhail.
Assalamu alaikum. So, I was just listening to what you guys were saying, but I find it interesting that he says the Flash should be read at least once a fortnight, which I think is 20 days or something. So, or every 3 weeks. I guess that is that is the seriousness of sincerity. And then he interestingly quotes these verses like you mentioned. Um, the verse previously he quoted, "Do not fall into dispute, lest you lose your heart and power depart. Stand before God in a devout frame of mind. Truly, he succeeds that purifies it, and he fails that corrupts it. Nor sell my signs for a small uh, price." And as you said, it's kind of interesting why the last verse he uses, as mentioned later, how he uses that to interpret sincerity. Um, but it's almost as if um, uh, uh, that as he goes on to say, it's not about the self because sincerity, when you're sincere, it's not about, I think Adam was mentioning this, sincerity isn't about being sincere to the self per se, but it's being sincere to what the self indicates to him alone. Uh, And as you mentioned, that's why it's the most important principle, as he mentions, and pertaining to the hereafter. Greatest strength, acceptable intercessor, firmest point of support, shortest way of reality, most acceptable prayer, most wondrous means of achieving a goal, purest worship, because it's not about the ego per se, but it is the quickest way to to God, the sustainer, the Lord of, myself and the rest of the worlds. So, when as he says, it's almost as if you ignore standing in front of God in a devout frame of mind, meaning to him alone, and thus purifying yourself of yourself in a way, like, your self-centeredness. Um, it's it's through connecting to him. That's how one purifies themselves in a way. Not by necessarily something that I do to myself, but submitting the self to him alone. Um, that's how we avoid dispute. Um, Otherwise, it's interesting as he mentions, like you said in the past section, lest you lose heart and your power depart. Power in and of itself does not come from the self, but it comes from him. That's what ultimate strength is from. As he says, firmest point of support. So this submission of the ego is how we attain sincerity. And that's how it's the quickest way to him. It's the strongest point of support. It's the purest form of worship because it's not about I or me, but about him. Highest quality because it's about him, the absolute one. That's the highest state. Uh, um, and most acceptable prayer, again. So, it's interesting he says all of these things because, the ego or the nefs itself sort of clouds this and it leads one to dispute, losing heart, losing power, losing devout frame of mind, corrupting this self. And as he says later on, selling these signs, these truths for essentially nothing, just for myself, which is not really nothing when you think about it, for my own sort of whims and ego and desire. It's nothing because, of what I want. So, so it's interesting. He sort of emphasizes this, and then moreover says it should be read once a fortnight because I guess of how serious this matter is. Because I mean, I guess we're still living through it. He lived through it. We're still living through it. But how this dispute and loss of sincerity has caused the believers to be weak, impoverished, powerless, confronted by terrible enemies, suffering extreme express oppression. So that's sort of what I took away personally from this first part.
Yep, thank you. Yeah, so sacred duty of serving belief in the Quran, basically, has been placed on our shoulders by divine grace. right? So it's not like, I mean, we are willing to do many other things in this world very easily, right? For an exchange of compensation or some, yes, money or something, or business needs or whatever. But this one is, I think, more serious in a way. That's the way what you were saying. The sacred duty of serving belief and the Quran. I think we need to be more sincere in this aspect because we're lacking a lot of this.
Can I bring up another point?
Sure. Yeah.
Sorry, I couldn't push the raise hand button. Uh, can anyone comment a little bit? I'm not in front of the text exactly. So can we comment on the issue about the brothers where it said, and also one should be careful about their brothers or about the work that one does because it will like if you don't do it sincerely, it negatively impacts your brothers. Can anyone something to that effect? Can you anyone comment on what's being meant there, or why should someone else other than me or you be affected by what the work that you or I do?
I was looking for where it was. Where did you see that? Violate all our brothers, right? This part, right? We shall otherwise destroy sincerity, thus harming eternal happiness for the sake of meaningless, unnecessary, harmful, sad, self-centered, tedious, hypocritical, base feelings and insignificant benefits. And how that basically violates all our brothers' rights, right? Transgressing the duty of service to the Quran and be disrespectful towards the sacredness of the truths of belief.
Yeah, at least what I take away from that, is that this need for eternal happiness and by every individual, by every man, every human being on this planet. Um, us, uh, being concerned about ourselves, as he says, sad, self-centered, tedious, hypocritical, base feelings, insignificant benefits. I guess we violate, or we then the objective for every man becomes lost because it becomes about myself. So then the truth becomes subservient to falsehood, to the people of misguidance. And I think that's his big concern is that this loss of sincerity has harmed the mission of the Quran, the truth, preservation of the truth, the sharing of the truth that concerns all men. It's not just about me per se, but it's about everyone. And me being concerned about myself, who follows me? How many followers do I have? Why are they going there? Why are they going somewhere else? Um, it has no value really in the grand scheme of things. Um, Essentially, we're violating, we're going against the duty and service to the Quran because the Quran is for all people. The belief is for everyone. So we harm that truth that's given to everyone, to every human being, and potentially also harm the work of other people in service of the Quran as well, by harboring these sort of insignificant feelings, jealousy, envy, rivalry. It may cause harm to others. They may feel a certain way. So in the end, we're missing the point because everyone has a right to be in service to the Quran. It's not just me. It's everyone's right. So if done with sincerity. So I think that's what I took away from this. It's almost saying that this individualism is not highly looked upon. So
So in a way, everyone can be a representative of the others. For example, if I insult something, let's say I insult the tree as being meaningless, right? So I insult the whole universe in a way as being meaningless. It leads to that in a way. right? If one thing is like something that's meaningless, then everything else, how come, right, that they should be meaningless as well? So that extends. So in the same way, if I do, and if one is not sincere, right? If I destroy the sincerity, I'm only for some petty little thing, then it makes everyone lose interest in a way, right? So it's kind of, as Suhail kind of was mentioning that. But I think Adam, you were going to say something.
Yeah, I don't have the text in front of me again. I'm sorry. But what came to my mind was that your brothers uh, have a connection with you, and that connection is in this sphere, right, of being your brothers of the hereafter, kind of like the beginning where it's talked about. It said, "My brothers of the hereafter." Like there is a bond and a connection between us that that we need to be conscious of. If I work for religion because my brothers were my supporters, they are by extension also the benefactors of that. If I and also because why? Because they supported me. They were the foundation through which I got to where I am, or through which I'm doing the things I'm doing. And likewise, if I sever the work now, that also kind of breaks, or it cuts them off from any benefit from that. In other words, like I don't give them, I'm not true to them. I maybe in an analogy format, analogous way, your family, like your parents, your brothers, your sisters, they supported you, they took care of you, right? And they worked hard for your success. But if you were to go and waste it now, and you leave your work and you waste your time, you end up in bad places, wasting your time and your life, you're by extension hurting all of them. Like you're not being true to them. That's in a family standpoint. Now, I know the world we live in, everyone thinks individualistically. Everyone's like, it's just me. Nobody else did anything for me. I got to live my own life. I can do whatever I want. This kind of pervasive mentality. They don't see that their brothers, their sisters, their family, or let's say in this context, this is even more uh, like out of their vision, out of their view, that they have brothers in religion or brothers of the hereafter. So they don't see that the work they're doing is also inclusive of those brothers. Because again, this individualistic mindset that's overtaken. So I don't know if that's a correct way to read it, interpret it, but that's what came to my mind.
Yeah, I would agree with that. This individualism, it harms the greater mission that everybody has to for eternal happiness. And so all working towards the same thing in sincerity. So me being concerned about myself and how I feel potentially also harms their attainment of eternal happiness, because then it, you know, may breed or cause rivalry, jealousy, envy, and for everyone to lose sincerity then. So it's like, if like kind of like how the prophet says in a famous statement, like if one part of the believers are one body, if one part of the body is in pain or sick, the whole body feels it. So the same thing here. Um, the moment that one person becomes individualistic, it can potentially affect the sincerity of everyone else, even though, as you said, we're all, believers are all brothers and sisters in the attainment of eternal happiness, all working together. That we all have a right to each other and working together because we're all working to the same goal, in service of the Quran. So, I need them as much as they need me. We all are in need of each other in this sort of sacred mission endeavor.
Right, thank you. Yeah. And also you mentioned about the truth, right? So that hurts also. the truth that we're all supposed to uphold. I mean, the truth stays the truth, but like we said, one connected whole body. If one part is pain, then the other, like, yeah, that's a good analogy of understanding this in a way. So individualism versus working in brotherhood.
The other thing, he quotes that verse, chapter 2, verse 41, nor sell my signs for um uh, uh
Small price, petty price.
yes, small price. It says in the verse, وَلَا تَشْتَرُوا بِآيَاتِي ثَمَنًا قَلِيلًا وَإِيَّايَ فَاتَّقُونِ. So, and do not sell my sign for a small price. Um, it's interesting because uh everyone has their signs from him that point back to him. We all are in connection with the signs of the Creator through our life, through our experiences, through the world, and they're all given to us for free in a way. And yet we try to make a profit off of them for ourselves. And that is really the thing we are given, and that tells you the importance of them. It's the most important thing, is that everything is a sign that points back to Him. Thus, we should be in service to Him in making known the truth. But yet, we sell it for a small price for our own selves, as he says. Hypocritical feelings, self-centeredness, insignificant benefits. Whether that's, maybe to even make money, potentially, as it happens today now. People make money off the Quran I mean, maybe you'll say in sincere way sometimes. Um, uh, or even something figuratively, selling it for my own sort of ego to be famous, well-known, influential. So sort of meaningless when you think about it, when it comes to what the actual point of these signs are. So, yeah, because any way, any time that you do try to sell them for a price, it's always going to be small. Nothing can be in comparison to this unified mission in service of the Quran, making the truth known, preserving the sacred truths of belief. Anyone who says that, oh, well, I'm just getting some benefit, no, it's a small price. It's all a small price. There's nothing that anybody could pay you enough that is worth the importance of the truth, the preservation of the truth, the dissemination of the truth.
Interesting, yeah. All right, so let's go to the next paragraph, basically, right? So there are many obstacles before significant good works. So there are obstacles definitely, right, in terms of the, so Satan's with their denials, right? Satan's put up a powerful struggle against those who assist in them. So any good works, significant good works that are sincere, there's challenge basically to them. In the face of those obstacles and Satan's, you have to rely on the strength of sincerity. You should avoid things that harm sincerity as you avoid snakes and scorpions in accordance with the words of Joseph, upon whom be peace. Nor do I absolve my own self of blame. The human soul is certainly prone to evil, unless my sustainer do bestow his mercy. So that's where the anything that triggers us in terms of our ego or being self-centered in a way or individualistic, that is basically is satanic in a way. That triggers the ego. Of course, that makes that one loses the sincerity in that way. Right? So So the strength of sincerity is very crucial in that sense. That's why I think the significance of being sincere in the service of the Quran and with the brotherhood for the hereafter, right? So the strength of sincerity works there. Any comment on this one? And the relation to the verse?
Um, yeah, it's as he says, many obstacles. It's interesting that obstacle um um the verse quotes the self. That might be the biggest obstacle, the greatest obstacle. Evil commanding soul. Human soul certainly prone to evil, unless my sustainer do bestow his mercy. In other words, nothing can be accomplished except submitting the soul to him. That's actually the mercy, is that I cannot do this on my own. I'm too weak and impoverished, even though the soul thinks it's not, and that this connection to him, knowing that sincerity is from being in service of the truth and the Quranic truths, sacredness of those truths. That's his mercy because they give the ultimate strength. There's, that is the, reliance upon him is the true source of strength. I don't really have to rely upon myself, actually. I just rely upon him. So that's actually merciful when you think about it, because it has nothing to do with me per se. Um, so if the believers, the community of the believers rely upon him solely, he is the one that through, with by his will is their preservation of the truth. Are you able to, resist this misguidance and disbelief? So evil commanding soul cannot be relied upon, as he says, do not let them deceive you. So yeah, that's what I took away from that.
I mean, that's what we need to be careful of as well, right? That's what I do, nor do I absolve my own self of blame because that's ego is within every human being in a way. So that's why we need to be careful in our living because the human soul is certainly prone to destruction or to evil unless basically I am careful and allow the blessing, the mercy of my sustainer to work. Like, so sincerity is again brought upon in that sense as well. So do not let egotism soul deceive you. To gain sincerity and preserve it, you take to guide the following. So that's where he says to use some rules. Adam, you want to say something?
Sorry, yes. I don't mean to stop you, brother. Awesome. Go ahead, please.
No, go ahead. Go ahead, please.
That's correct. I think I agree 100%. How about the aspect also though of in this line of work, there will be big obstacles, or there will be a things put out before you that will in, intention, like you're taking on something to do this work means you must be aware that there will be a strong impetus or a strong kind of push from people to sell it for cheap right price. There will be a strong uh, push from many directions to affect you and make you right go off the path. So it needs to be in the case of I mean, you're human, I'm human. We will definitely be affected by it. I think that's what the verse is saying. I don't know if this verse is in the context of like the wife of Aziz situation. Doesn't have to be. I'm not saying it has to be in the historical context, but I'm saying that if he says, oh, I'm a human, I don't have it in front of me, but something, the soul is prone to evil, then, and so it's going to happen. However, with support from God and His mercy and my sustainer, you can overcome this. But I think there's an issue of one acknowledging that the path of faith, of belief is one that's going to be laden with obstacles. Big obstacles will come in your way. So that needs to be aware or understood by the person. The second is you are prone to evil. The nafs is, not you are, but the nafs is. You really have to be conscious, always be aware of this and get your strength, like Brother Sohail, like you said. So just adding on.
Yep, thank you. Yeah, so the self is the biggest obstacle in a way, the human self, which can have egotism or right? So even if you're at the service of the Quran, basically, so you need basically to be clear in yourself, own self, in terms of being sincerely for the service. Otherwise, all the motivation or even doing something. So, because that's where the biggest obstacle would come, I would think. Right. And then there's like, okay, yeah, there are other things, but the first one is the human own soul, I would say. Does everybody agree with that, or? I know Adam was like basically that there will be obstacles. That's the first, right? But correct, I agree with that. But then the first obstacle would be the self, I would say.
Yeah, what was your question?
No, no, so I said that the biggest obstacle that one would face is their own self in terms of their own ego that would stop them from doing some such service.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, as Adam was saying, there are always obstacles from other people, but looking to ourselves, that's the first one. Because if, we let those other obstacles affect us, then we lose sincerity potentially. We then may rely upon our soul, evil commanding soul. So the first obstacle is first within ourselves, and then it becomes easier to face those external obstacles that are put up, that Satan and his army put up against the truth. Say, it's interesting as Adam was talking. I just remember when the prophet was told by his townsmen, his people, his family, his uncles, to give this up, we'll give you anything that you want, wealth, money, riches, power, women, anything like that. And he says, even if, so that's an obstacle per se, because they don't want him to share the truth, preserve it and share it with others because it's a threat to their status, their position in society. Um, and he says, even if you gave me the sun in my right hand, moon in my left hand, I would not give this up. So, um, you know, there are always obstacles, but sincerity to the truth is what matters.
I think the bigger issue is, and also with that, is what does it mean when he says, nor do I absolve myself? Like, why, what is he trying to acknowledge? Or what is the significance of the verse telling us that he says this, or there is an aspect of not absolving oneself?
I mean, I think potentially, it's recognizing that maybe sometimes we don't even know when our soul enjoins towards something that's evil or something that's insincere. Like just always being aware, self-aware. that the moment we think maybe that we are not susceptible to, what the soul desires or wants, the ego desires, that's when we become susceptible to it. So always making sure to keep the self in check. The human soul is certainly prone to evil, meaning it tends towards that. Now, I shouldn't say tends, but like it can incline towards that easily. And the moment we think, oh, we're not, oh, we're okay, that's when it happens potentially. So that could easily is a trick of Satan or the obstacle Satan puts it, or like we are okay, I am okay now. But that's actually when you're most prone to potentially losing sincerity.
Yeah, good points actually. Thank you for sharing all that. So we need to be careful, inshallah. All right. So should we continue with the first rule or should we leave it for next week? Yeah,
Probably pick it up next week, inshallah.
inshallah. All right, so I'll stop here. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Subhanaka la ilma lana illa ma alamtana innaka antal alimul hakim. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Bi hurmati surat al-Fatiha. All right, thank you everyone. Now, how do I stop the live stream? All right.
Jazakallah khair. Nice, good to see you, brothers. Happy
Yeah,
to see you, brothers. MashaAllah.
inshallah. See you next